Altadena After the Fire is an Urban One podcast dedicated to chronicling the community's journey toward recovery. In this episode, we speak to Charisse Bremond, the CEO of the Brotherhood Crusade, about their efforts on the front lines in Altadena and Pasadena, helping residents rebuild and recover. We'll also check in with our media partners, KBLA in Los Angeles, where host Dominique DiPrima and journalist James Farr tackle some of the most pressing issues surrounding the Eaton fire. Is the water and air safe? Why we can't let this disaster be forgotten. How the displacement of nearly 22,000 people could impact the census numbers for that community. And what rights do renters and small business owners who don't own property have in the recovery process? Join us as we continue to uncover the lasting effects of this catastrophe and the fight to rebuild a community that refuses to be erased. This is Altadena After the Fire. Welcome to Altadena After the Fire. This is Colby Cobe. I'm your host, and we are speaking to Charisse Bremond, who is the president and CEO of the Brotherhood Crusade, who we at Urban One have been working with to help them with the wildlife fund that they created to help families and community and businesses in need after the Eaton fire in the Los Angeles area, specifically Altadena and Pasadena. And the Brotherhood Crusade has been around for 57 years and has been serving the community. And this moment happened, and the world is watching. And I wanted to just take some time to talk to you, Charisse, a little bit about some of the things that you all are doing in the aftermath of the fire, and just kind of give us some update on what's going on.
Yeah, and first I want to thank Kathy Hughes and our board chairman, Danny J. Bakewell, who had a call while the fires were happening, and they both said we need to do something immediately. And understanding our reach and our work of serving the community for 57 years, they said we need a fund and we need to be able to support our families immediately. And I got on a call with Ms. Hughes, Mr. Bakewell, and said, hey, I agree, let's move forward. And here we are, 5 weeks after the tragedy of not only losing life, but our families and friends that have lost everything because of the Eaton fires. And so we're very honored that we've been partnering with Radio 1, Urban Radio, to ensure that we could support families immediately with financial support. And that was very important to all of us, to Ms. Hughes, Mr. Bakewell, and myself, to ensure that our families have dignity. We understand that the families that have lost everything in the Altadena area, they doctors, nurses, teachers, educators, attorneys, they are middle-class Black folks who have worked for decades, legacies of grandparents passing down their homes to their children. And so we understand that the clothing and other essential items are important. All of it's important. And so our goal and our plan is to support our families financially. We've already provided over $70,000 direct financial support to families who have been impacted by the Eaton fires, as well as we have raised over $500,000 that all of that funding will go directly to families in the Altadena, Pasadena area to just give them a level of care. Understanding the letters and the applications where folks have lost all of their transportation. Folks have lost their music equipment that they need to be able to perform in the industry. We've had families who have had loved ones who lost their wheelchairs to walkers, to you name it. We just know that families need everything in this time, and it's short term and long term. And that is really critical for us to support in the short term, but to be here for the long term with the love and care that we know our families need right now.
So talk a little bit about the Altadena community. I never heard of Altadena before. I didn't know anything about it until the fire. And then I come to find out that I have a lot of friends in the entertainment industry that live in Altadena, African Americans. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I didn't know about this community. But talk a little bit about the history of the community and sort of its deep connection to the Brotherhood Crusade.
Yeah, it is a rich community. It's roughly about 42,000 folks who lived in the Altadena community. In its height, predominantly Black community with 43% back in the 70s and 80s. And of course, with gentrification and other things that happen, it's now a community roughly 18% of Black African Americans that lived in the Altadena area, which is still phenomenal because when you think of 42%, you take 18% of that, it's still a high level of Black communities, Black family members that live in that area. But more important, that's so special, it was a time when Black folks couldn't live in Pasadena. They were not allowed to purchase homes in the Pasadena area. And so to create this wealth in the Altadena area, the average home price $1.4 million to purchase a home in that area. And so to understand that level of commitment of Black people understanding this is our community, we are here to stay, we are going to thrive, and we're going to raise our families here. It's just a beautiful community, the backdrops with the mountains. You have business owners, you have restaurants. It's just a thriving community that celebrated everything great about Black excellence.
So last episode of the podcast, which was our first, I had someone who lived in Altadena his entire life. And he was sort of telling the story about wildfires and living in California. And he, never, ever felt like it was ever anything that could ever happen in that community. In fact, up until the day that it happened, even though he had heard, it was 3.5 miles away, and he happens to work in media, so he was reporting on the fires in general. And then he was so blown away with just how quickly everything happened. And he talked about his neighbors and how his neighbors are in shock. As you all are, peeling things back and getting connected with family members and starting that process of giving them assistance, talk about the psychological toll that this is taking on these folks. It must be just beyond imagination of how overwhelming this could be. But you're on the front line dealing with folks. So how are they dealing with it? And is there anything that the Brotherhood Crusade is doing just for the mental health part of it?
Yeah, the grief is overwhelming. As I have best friends who lost everything, a board member, his son lost everything. And so the grief and the trauma that our families are facing is real. I think to understand what that looks like, very proud that there is a bill in the state right now, Assembly Bill 1032, of really helping families to cope and navigate this grief. That law, once it's passed, will allow families to be able to charge their insurance with 12 sessions of mental health support, which is critical. Yeah, and so to understand the emotional, the mental part of this, not only parents, but the young people. Brotherhood Crusade serves over 3,000 young people through our trauma-informed model. And so we understand not only trauma that young people have faced and not knowing how to deal with it, but also having culturally competent therapists is so critical in this space, because that trust and vulnerability, when you are sharing, it really needs someone to understand how to support a family through all of this. I know by firsthand when I went to go present one of the financial checks to one of the family members, and she was telling the story about her kids. She has a teenage daughter, she has a younger son, but the younger son could not process the trauma around the fires. He witnessed the fires. He was screaming and yelling at his parents, "We got to go, we got to go, we got to go. We got to get out now. We got to get out now." And so right after that, he could not imagine his mom not being in the same space with him because of this fear, this trauma of witnessing the fires, driving through the fires to get out. And now here you are, you've lost everything. You did not have time to get, special items that your children, their safety net. Kids have special toys, they have special things that help them through life anyway. And so now to know that everything is gone, and so for us is not only helping family members, but young people, because that really is a critical part of ensuring that they are healthy and whole as they go through this journey over the next couple of years. And so we are looking at expanding our services in the Altadena area. We ran a Pasadena Sports League for decades, and the partner who we worked with, Victor McClinton, unfortunately um, was murdered on Christmas about 7 years ago. And so once that tragedy happened with the Brotherhood Crusade, we stopped operating direct program services in that area. And so now the school district has reached out, other key stakeholders of really wanting us to come back into the area to provide our programming, which has been nationally recognized.
So here we are, just trying to wrap our hands around, what happened for the rest of the country. And you were on the front line. What can you say to us just from the outside, in addition to giving financial support, what else can people do to help the folks in that community?
Look at adopting a family. Look at that journey, and we're not using GoFundMe pages. We're verifying like multiple steps of ensuring that we are supporting people who have had serious loss. But what would that look like for our communities if we had families adopting a family to say, hey, over the next 3 to 5 years, I'm here to support you. And that's the long haul. I mean, if we look at our grant making to our families, we're looking at quarterly support over the next 3 years to support these families quarterly, to really understand that this need and the trauma and the stresses and the vulnerability of our families is everything. I think about my own childhood. My late father founded Brotherhood Crusade. My mother was an educator. Danny Bakewell led this institution for 35 years. And we always had in our home a place for others. We always made room at the table. If someone lost their job or someone was having a difficult time, my parents always opened their home to support others. And so this is a humanitarian crisis for our people. And so that, I know everyone doesn't have the financial means sometimes.
Yeah.
But how do you be engaged with a family of just saying, I want to listen. I want to be able to maybe volunteer if you're out of state and you're coming to Los Angeles for anything. How do we support families that just need to be connected at every aspect? I mean, I'm very proud of not only this financial fund that we've created, but working with Cedric the Entertainer, we provided 9 Fiat 500 vehicles to families this past week that where they've lost their transportation. And I want people to know they have lost everything. So at this time, everything matters when they have to still pay their mortgage if they had a mortgage, and now they have to pay for a rental over these years as they are rebuilding. So that toll for our people is I could not imagine. We took families to see the musical 44 about Obama, Steve McKeever, wonderful satire around President Obama. But just to have joy for an evening, to have laughter, to be able to say we're just going to take a pause. And so when I think of all the things that the families need, they need it all right now.
Well, have you do you have the sort of the makeup of being able to maybe connect people to families if they reached out to you all directly? Is there a mechanism already in place to do that?
I would love to connect them to the families we're already supporting, because their stories will tell you, the need of what they need. And our application process is not overwhelming because they're already overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And working with Urban One and your attorneys, they actually provided some best practice guidelines for us to ensure that we're meeting all the standards by the IRS and documentation. But yes, I think, vetting those families who say, I want to support a family, because you don't want to just connect a family and then they say, oh, I want to help. And then 2 months later, they don't have the bandwidth to stay in it the long haul.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a great idea, and it's actually a great way for some folks that could afford it to be able to help and assist. Like I was just thinking just now as you was talking about people that may have an extra car that they own that they could donate to a family that has no transportation. That would be really helpful in this moment. So if you're listening and your mind is kind of twirling about how can I help the folks in Altadena and Pasadena, those are some of the things that we just discussed, but you may have some ideas as well. And Charisse, how can people reach out to you or your organization directly if they want to engage further on some ideas to help the families?
Yes, you can reach out at www.brotherhoodcrusade.org. That is www.brotherhoodcrusade.org. Or you could call directly our offices, 323-846-1649. And my executive assistant, LaShondra Boughton, has been helping myself to facilitate all of this great work before we bring on a new team member, because it is each week we are, supporting our families every week with support, but there is a process. But right now, I sign off on every application. I read every application to ensure I'm clear on why we are working so hard to support our families of the Eaton fires with dignity, care, and love.
And we will provide this information you just stated in the show notes for the podcast as well, if you want to reach for those listening that want to get further information. Also, just for anybody that has been affected by the fire and needs some assistance, they can go that same connection route that you just named as well.
Yes, and we will vet them, ensuring that all of their information, that they are truly a person who has had impact from the wildfires. And so as we continue to get support, the net is wider around the referrals. And so our goal is to support families as long as we have the resources to support them.
Well, Charisse, thank you so much for your time. You guys have been very busy and overwhelmed. I'm very appreciative for you just giving the time to give us an update. And please keep us informed of what is going on, but also any way that we can assist you. And just will continue to say our prayers for you, your organization, your community, for some better days ahead. And we send lots of love and optimism in your direction.
Thank you, Kobe, and thank you to the whole team at Radio One for partnering with Brother Crusade to support our families in the Altadena, Pasadena area.
Thanks, Charisse Bremond and the Brotherhood Crusade. And remember, you can make a donation to help families in need at urbanonecares.com. And now let's check in with our media partners at KBLA in Los Angeles. This is host Dominique DiPrima and journalist James Farr.
I'm being joined by a writer for the Progressive, the Los Angeles Progressive. He's also the host of the Conversation Live podcast, and he's a contributor to KBLA. James Farr, good morning.
Good morning, Dominique. You know, they say it never rains in Southern California, but that's a lot of day.
Except when it does, right?
Except for when it does. And when it does, it does. How you doing?
I'm good. And today's supposed to be really like over the top rain. I mean, I don't know how it was out Pasadena, Altadena way, out your way, but it was fairly heavy last night. But today's supposed to be like last year's monsoon type rain. So if you can delay a long trip, like getting on these freeways, if you can kind of stay right in your neighborhood or in your house, this is a good day to do that. Save it for Valentine's.
Absolutely. I mean, because of our proximity to the foothills, we get more rain anyway than kind of here in the basin.
Oh, really? Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, we get a lot more rain. And so there are concerns about, I don't say avalanches, mudslides, and, because of that burn scar in the mountains. So many areas right now some areas are under an evacuation warning all over again.
Because of the mudslide potential. I didn't realize that. Yeah. That's terrible. You call it a burn scar. It almost seems like an understatement because it's such a huge patch of our reality. So I'm speaking more so of the mountain range. Okay,
kind
I
of
got
more
you.
The less urban area.
So forestry. That mountain range, they're concerned the mud will slide down into the populated areas?
Well, so there are homes in the hillside, right?
Yeah.
But what you're talking about is the devastation in the northwest part of Altadena,
right,
which is much more residential and less forestry. And so that's kind of what the concern is for the hillside area.
I gotcha.
Yeah,
and it's always the roads, too, because, look, last time we had the monsoon type rains, we had Stalker Street, which is right in the heart of, southwest Los Angeles, blocked. Couldn't drive up or down because that mountain, that hill, I don't even know if it's really qualifying as a mountain. So it was in the road.
Another concern is the runoff from the homes, from the properties, with the toxins and stuff that may be in the soil and how that may enter into the storm drain systems. And I have a friend who surfs, black brother who surfs, so fish out of water is what his thing is. But he said they haven't been able to surf for weeks because of the toxins.
Oh yeah. And I don't know when they're going to be able to go back in the water. Yeah. I mean, I have my own concerns about the water coming out of the faucet. Because honestly, only certain areas have been given that do not drink or boil. It's not even a boil order. It's just don't use your water.
No. So Pasadena, they're water snobs and snobs everything else. We have our own water and utility company. So we're not a part of DWP. We have PWP. Our water was compromised in the immediate, aftermath of the fire, but they've seemed to have, I guess, fixed the reservoir that serviced certain. Well, not all of the city.
And we never got a do not drink or don't just boil or whatever. But this is where old fashioned Dominique, who doesn't trust the government, comes out because. I don't think you magically fixed the water and the air that quick. I just don't. I mean, obviously we're not dying. We're not dropping like flies. But I wonder about the long-term impact on our lungs, our skin. You take a shower in that water, whatever's in there comes through your pores. I think obviously you got to take a shower.
Right.
But if you can avoid...
Well, you should.
You need to. Yeah. One does. But if you can avoid anything you can do to cleanse your body,
Sure.
avoid drinking that water, if you can avoid even cooking with it, I would right now.
Right. Well, some say Hennessy and sea moss kind of clears everything out. I don't know that to be true, but I heard that as kind of when we were going through COVID.
I need to call my friend McCoy Zeno.
Ask him if Hennessy and sea moss.
Well, I don't. He doesn't make Hennessy, but he makes sea moss, so he might know. I've known him to have a Hennessy, so maybe. He might.
I don't drink, so I don't know if that is a good remedy. No, but I mean, I will say, even I feel a little bit more fatigued because of just the smoke, and breathing has been a little bit more challenging.
Yeah.
I'm a very active walker. It's my form of self-care, kind of centering myself, focusing, setting intentions for the day. So I didn't disrupt that routine. I should have did like you, go into a mall or something and walk.
Yeah, that's what we were power walking at the mall, because at least it's indoors.
Right.
Right. So there's some filtration, there's some protection from ashes and stuff. Now rain, so
Right.
you got. And that's the other thing. I know the rain cleans the air as far as like ash and stuff like that, but if there's toxic gases and stuff, the rain is not going to clean that.
No.
And the rain itself is going to be then laden with ashes and particles and whatever. So that's not rain you want to stand out in and put your face up to.
But
it's dirty rain.
I grew up next to a Chevron refinery, so I kind of think I'm in Richmond.
Yeah,
I think I'm built.
County.
I'm built for this, but I'm.
Well, I mean, look, we live in South LA. Well, I do, and a lot of us do. Black people tend to live closer to refineries and battery recycling plants and all the things that spew toxic dust and fumes into the air. That's what environmental racism is. But still, you don't want to go stick your head in the mouth of the lion. Like, if you can avoid standing in front of a moving truck. For me, I can say, oh yeah, well, I was raised on toxins. That don't mean I'm going to drink anthrax.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, if you recall, Dr. William Sims on the broadcast that we did
Yes.
at the church, he said, he remarked, everyone in Pasadena has a neighbor that's a scientist. And it's really true, right?
Because of
a neighbor, like,
Right.
a scientist. So even on the side of town where I live,
because of Caltech.
because of Caltech and
NASA.
NASA and all,
Yeah.
all of that, JPL. But even where I live, there's a development that can't get redeveloped because somewhere back in the 40s, they used to manufacture munitions like Tomahawk missiles. And so I've learned way more than I ever cared to know about these kind of issues, which now informs me how serious it is with this fire, which is going to inhibit the recovery. Because where are you taking this toxic soil? So it's a lot.
Yeah, that's the controversy. It's already starting to.
Sure.
There's already starting to be some folks from different neighborhoods, can't blame them, who are rejecting adjacent sites as holding sites or dumping sites for that stuff. So this is, it's a long road. And it's funny you say that, because one of my friends, I don't know a lot of people in Pasadena, Altadena, you and your wife and a handful of others. One of that handful is a scientist. So there you go.
Well, you may not know a lot of people in Pasadena, Dominique, and Altadena, but a lot of people know you. They know your voice on the radio. They know your career and stuff.
Well,
and somebody even called me Dominique one day, right? Like that's how popular you are. Wow. They just see me and say, "Hey, Dominique."
They said,
right?
"Hey, Dominique, I like your haircut."
Something like that,
I like your shirt, Altadena 91001, not for sale.
Not for sale.
Not for sale.
This shirt is a design by the late Mac Robinson's grandson, Dennis Robinson. And so he and a collective, Horace Wormley and others, are they're creatives. And so they've put this line out in there to benefit the Dena Relief Fund.
I always tell you that James writes for the LA Progressive. You could find it at laprogressive.com. And he's doing some great work there. It is an excellent publication. You can sign up for it. They'll send it to your phone every day, and it's free. Although if you have a few bucks to chip in, that'd be great, because the work they do is important. But you've got an article in the LA Progressive. I think did it come out yesterday?
I think it came out yesterday. I mean, I turned it in, I think, 2 days ago. So, so it came out yesterday.
And it's really interesting because you're talking about Pasadena, Altadena, and the fire relief. And I know a lot of us kind of jumped on the bandwagon, let me buy some gift cards, go volunteer, send money to a GoFundMe. But this has been my worry all along, James, is that the long-term recovery would fall out of the headlines. We'd be on to the next crisis, the Donald Trump circus, and we would forget about thousands of people, specifically, in my concern, Black people, because we tend to be the ones folks forget about, sure. Who have a slog ahead. This is not going to bounce back in a month, 2 months, 3 months. So your article kind of goes into not just what it's going to take to come back, but the true extent of the devastation. So talk a little bit about this this survey, this scientific survey, sure. That you are basing your article on.
Sure. First of all, KBLA Talk 1580 is not going to forget about the community, and we're going to continue to report and tell stories from on the ground. You're absolutely right, Dominique. I mean, once the kind of excitement, and that's kind of a very cynical way to frame up what happens, but once all of those other things that you were describing, the disaster capitalism, the disaster economy that's happening, the grifting that's happening, as well as the abundance of generation of support with resources and all the like, right? That stuff fades because of what you said. It just falls out of the news cycle. Well, there is an organization. These are a consulting firm, a public polling firm out of Pasadena, a small boutique firm, the Future Organization. They're behavioral scientists. They, too, were impacted by this fire. And so they've put together this very comprehensive survey, right? What the county, and no one knows right now, is exactly the count of people that are displaced. It's kind of guessing. That's what we've been seeing.
Right, because what we hear about is the structures. I thought it was 9. Your article says 11,000 structures.
It's 11,000 structures. And so if you think about 2.8 residents in each Altadena structure or home, right? There's 44,000 people who reside in Altadena. Now, that doesn't count people who don't participate in the census. It could be more, obviously, if they're not counted. So just doing that math.
And who doesn't usually get counted? Black people.
Right.
Right. So we're saying we don't know the number of people that have actually been displaced or made homeless by the Eden Canyon fires.
So when we aggregate out, the research shows when they aggregate out a sampling, about 400 people have responded. African Americans are responding at a much lower rate, and that is again because generational, technological, and then awareness about the survey. But when you aggregate that number out, it looks like there are about 24,000 people who have been displaced.
That's a lot of folks.
How are they going to be tracked? Right. How is the county? No one's in town. And so that's what that research is beginning to unveil. And right now our electeds and many others they're really guessing. They don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the challenge of counting Black people and Latino people too is we don't like just giving out our information, and many times we're busy. We don't have time for your little survey.
Right.
But what you're saying is, according to the modeling that these scientists are doing right now, we think it is around 22,000 people.
And that's conservative.
And it could be many more.
It could be many more. And so the rush for resources, right, and the rush from people to come in and help, right? I just talked with someone yesterday. She came, an insurance professional. She said, "I came down to help. Where are people?" So there's a disconnection.
Right. Well, where are they going to be? I mean, they can't go to their homes. They got to go somewhere.
No.
And from what I understand, those shelters are closing down, right?
They are closing down. The convention center has business. It's not. I mean, it's a regional problem when you think about how the proximity of Altadena and Pasadena. It's a regional problem, but it's not a Pasadena problem, right? It's not a Pasadena proper problem. Pasadena only lost maybe a couple of hundred structures. Right.
You're talking about it's an Altadena problem, which Altadena and Pasadena are right next to each other. Many times we think of them as one, but from a government structural standpoint, they're not one.
No.
Pasadena has its own mayor, and as the mayor of Los Angeles pointed out on this show on Monday, the number of the number of folks you mention in Altadena are actually represented by the Board of Supervisors.
Right.
They're not represented by the Pasadena mayor nor the LA mayor, technically, although I know that the mayor of Los Angeles is directing resources to Altadena.
Sure. I mean, it's a regional problem, right? I mean,
yeah, it's a regional problem, but when you drill down to who's responsible, it's the LA County Board of Supervisors. They do not have their own mayor.
Altadena is the only unincorporated area in LA County that has its own pseudo township, like what you would think of as a council, but they're nothing more than an advisory body, and they just can only make recommendations. They can't appropriate anything. They can't direct resources. Catherine Barger is the supervisor for that area, and that area is one of the largest geographical areas by district in Los Angeles County. So,
and she's the only Republican on the LA County Board of Supervisors. I mean, she's not a MAGA Republican per se.
She looked very nice going to see Trump, though.
she's a Republican who knows how to do bipartisan dealings, which is something that is like the dinosaurs. It is an endangered species.
Right.
And so that actually in some weird way could be an advantage for Altadena.
I certainly hope so.
If Trump thinks he can deliver a win for a Republican who looked very nice when she went to see him.
Well, that's a conversation for another day, but we need people to fill out this survey, right? And so folks need to go to the LA Progressive, click under my name. You can read all the other stuff, but most importantly, folks need to access this survey. And if you know someone that knows someone that needs to access this survey, it's a comprehensive survey. It will take you about 15, 20 minutes. Help grandma, help auntie, help folks fill it out, right? And it's important that they do it now. This is what I'm learning from speaking with the researchers they only want to keep this open for about 30 days because the further you get away from the event, the further or lacking of memory that some of the people will have, because we're talking about a lot of elders in this space.
Plus it's traumatic.
Extremely traumatic.
So yeah. So they can go to laprogressive.com.
Yes.
And find you.
Find me, and it's in.
Click on James.
That's me.
Yeah. And then fill out the survey. Okay, so we're talking Pasadena, Altadena. James Farr is here. He lives out there. And you have an article in the LA Progressive right now. If you know someone or you are someone, I'm amazed by how many of my friends or colleagues live in Altadena. I never knew they lived there and have lost everything. According to this survey, it looks like around half the people that the scientists talked to lost everything and could not move back without a complete rebuild.
Could not. And even if there's nothing to come back to, even if there is some portion of your structure, even if the entire structure is there, right, as we see standalone houses, the toxins, the cleaning, like,
right, and who wants to live in a neighborhood if your house is completely fine, where everything around you is ash and toxic?
Absolutely.
Nowhere to go. So we're talking a couple of years here. The other thing in your article, which touches on a point I've been really concerned about, is the small businesses and renters who are not even really receiving the same kind of attention. If you're a renter, you're not rebuilding.
No.
If you're a small business, even if you do rebuild, your customers are gone.
Right. And then even it triggers something different with FEMA, right? A homeowner versus a renter. But Perry's Joint, right, where we were going to host the broadcast a few weeks ago, he owned a property in Altadena that housed an institutional eatery called the Little Red Hen. That also burned down. So there's a multiplier of small businesses. Altadena doesn't have a large business corridor. It's really a very bedroom type community, not a lot of industry there or businesses.
Okay, so two questions. Yeah. If I'm a renter, I don't get help moving. I don't get help rebuilding, obviously, because I don't own that structure. What assistance can a renter from Altadena get?
Well, they still have to go through FEMA, right? First thing is if they have to, and it depends on the type of place, but you may have renter's insurance. which may provide you some relief.
Right,
and
but
some
a lot
of the
of people
similar
don't.
things. Well, a lot of
rented
places
for
force
many
you to
years,
have
and
it,
I
right?
never had renter's insurance
Yeah.
my whole life.
So
as a renter.
That's the first step, right?
Right.
If you have a rental policy, right? Renter's insurance, you'd go there. The next step would be going through the same process as everyone else, FEMA, the American Red Cross, and to kind of understand.
But that's probably the recovery of your things.
Right? I mean,
but does it help you to move to a new apartment is the question.
It's been situational. Like, I can't get a solid answer.
So it might not. That's why everybody's saying go to the tenants unions.
Yes.
And try to get help there. And then the other thing is, if I'm a Red Hen business or Perry's and I sustain damage, if I own the place, then I would get help to rebuild. But what if I'm leasing, which many business owners are?
Well, FEMA actually has some very low interest loans. One, I think it's 2% up to $500,000. And so you can, claim for loss of revenue, damages, and all of the things. So there is a program, but be clear, it is a loan, right? Even at a lower interest rate.
You got to pay back loans, yeah.
You got to pay loans.
And the other thing is, if I have a long-time customer base in Altadena that is now gone, what's my calculation about whether or not to even bring my business back? If my customers are gone, does it even make sense?
That's the nuance of the recovery. And I think right now, folks, that hasn't settled in. This rush to recovery has overstepped the fact that we're in a relief process right now. People need to be housed. Businesses need to figure out how they're going to sustain themselves. Recovery will come. You had someone on the show, I can't remember who it was talking about the depression and kind of the stages of grief. Right now, it's like people are shocked.
Yeah.
The reality.
I think it was Dr. Sunshine and Dr. Sunshine and Dr. J.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, Dr. Jashana Johnson is Dr. J, not the basketball Dr. J. But I think, I think your article is really good. One of our jobs as people on the mic and people on the pen is to make folks start thinking maybe a phase or two ahead in that recovery, grief, denial, anger, the stages, to, start thinking about, well, what are my plans? What really makes sense? And I back to your sweatshirt for a moment. Where can we get them? Speaking of supporting the Dina,
it is Dina
Drive. And the reason I'm saying that is because we want to support, but we also want to be mindful about, what's the best way to rebuild? What makes sense? It's like my friend who's all of his customers are in the Palisades.
Well, I think
business has gone to zero.
It's not my place, but I'm gonna say it anyway. It's not a rebuild, right? It's a new town that is going to be developed. There's nothing to rebuild. And so I think the framing up of how we look at what's happening there, that mindset may make it a more healthier transition and more empowering. But the idea that people are rebuilding what they once had, it's not happening.
Dina Drive. That's what this Altadena 91001.
Yeah, it's supporting the Dina Relief Drive, and you can find it at Pasadena Classic, and that's CLSC, pronounced Classic. You can find them on Instagram, and their website is there. And Dennis is a good brother, Dennis Robinson, as I said earlier. He's the grandson of the late, great Mac Robinson, who ran 36 Olympics with Jesse Owens and Hitler in the stadium. Mac Robinson returned home to no ticker tape parade, no fanfare. He was awarded a mop and a broom.
Terrible.
And worked for the city.
Not the knockoff Hitler that we have today, which is like
no.
Okay. Well, that's where we are in America. We're going to go to Barbara calling us from Orange County. Good morning, Queen.
Good morning, Dominique. I want to know, for the people that are selling their property up there in the Eaton area, maybe they shouldn't sell their property. Maybe they should consider getting a boxable house for now, because they can run as low as $20,000. And there are actual houses where they can get a small house for $70,000 to $130,000 instead of rebuilding in the beginning to where it was. And that way they can keep their property. And also when they do start building or whatever, I sure hope they hire Black contractors and Black construction workers, because we sure get left out of everything. And then who is the city planner that will be planning all of this? Because it looked like they had a lot of plans for that.
Again, this has got to be Miss Barbara. Again, this has got to be county.
Yeah,
because there's no city government in Altadena.
Yeah, this
is unincorporated.
It's a countywide. People, Miss Barbara, are gonna have a myriad of different circumstances. There's no universal light switch that is going to fix it for everybody. I ask people to cautiously not shame people because of a financial decision that they may be forced to make. The individual circumstances, Dominique, for everybody, mine isn't going to be the same. I may have
some people have insurance. Some people have no insurance at all.
Some people are underinsured.
Some people are 90 and they're not ready to live in a boxable house.
Right.
Some people, their property may have a lot of toxic stuff on it and may need to be cleaned up quite a bit before they could even put a tiny home on there.
It's a long one. My mentee, his grandparents.
And so my question was going to be, I'm not trying to shame anybody. I want them to keep their property and not sell it and keep it in the family.
Yeah, I mean, I want them to not sell it too. Just hold on a sec, Miss Barbara. I want them to not sell it too. But what he's saying is we can't judge because we don't know their circumstances. Go ahead.
My next question was, what do they need most as people that want to volunteer? They're coming from Riverside, Orange County. What do they need most, and who do we contact?
What we need, and thank you for that question, Ms. Barbara. What's needed most is a count of people and a way to contact them, right? Once you identify the population and where they are, then you can start dispersing those resources pointedly in other places, because the people aren't they're not home, they're not in their area. So I mean, they're having a lot of things happening in the city. No one's there because they're not there,
because their homes aren't there. Well, I mean, there is a really comprehensive list of Black GoFundMe pages,
right?
That I think it's still posted at LA Mutual Aid Network on Instagram.
There are things, yeah. I mean, people need cash. Let me answer that question. She talked about the trades, right? Now is the time for that 15-year-old, that 12-year-old, if they're interested in a trade, to start making a pathway to a trade, because the jobs are going to be there in 5 years. They're just not here now. And so the idea that you hope they hire Black people, well, Black professionals or tradesmen, it's, consistent with what our populations are, right? There are not that many of us here in this area. So you're going to have even less contractors and folks in those specific trades. So now is the time.
I mean, they might not have to wait 5 years. Right now, there's a lot of rebuilding that's going to go on everywhere.
No, there's a lot of remediation and cleanup that's going to go up.
And building.
Yeah, and there'll be some aspects of building. But if you're not EPA certified,
now,
if you're not EPA certified, you're not starting a hauling
James,
business.
People are hauling junk. They're cleaning stuff up. But to finish what I was saying, Miss Barbara, about, what can you do? I mean, I think there are a number of organizations, like we talked about, neighborhood servants,
yes,
or you can get with the NAACP Pasadena, that would be able to give you a direction as far as volunteering in a way that would actually be helpful. Because as James said, people are not in Altadena right now.
Well, my next piece talks about the grifting, right? That's where we're going with this. These large national organizations raising hundreds of millions of dollars over the last 4 weeks.
Yeah, I'm talking about the local
NAACP.
NAACP.
Yes.
And we can go deeper into grifting, because I think we talked about it some with Brandon Lamar several weeks ago, but it's amped up now. But I want to underline about the GoFundMes, because there is a list of verified Black family GoFundMes. Some of them have only raised a couple $1,000s. Some have raised everything they were asking for. And I think every bit counts. And to your point, James, about what's a grift and what's real, if you go through an organization like Neighborhood Servants, like the Pasadena NAACP, like the
Pasadena Church, yeah.
Pasadena Church, then you'll make sure that if you are going to donate, you're donating to a real GoFundMe that will help a real, actual Black family.
And also, the GoFundMes can disinclude you from accessing certain insurance and FEMA funds. So it's
what do you mean?
Meaning you are receiving relief, and so FEMA is saying, well, you just raised $100,000. Why do you need money from us?
Oh, so they'll say you no longer qualify because you got money through a GoFundMe.
Or they may say you weren't in a mandatory evacuation zone like I was. You weren't under evacuation orders like I was. You were in an area alert.
A warning, right?
A warning. There's a totally different thing in terms of what resources and benefits are available to you.
That's interesting. Did not know that. Thank you, Barbara, for the questions and the commentary. We just have a minute here, James. What do you want to make sure you emphasize while you're here?
Pray for these people. Pray for the community, right? Send them positive love and energy, right? Don't be judgmental. If you haven't seen it from the ground, you have no idea what these people are doing. So before you join the social media bandwagon, don't sell. And Altadena is not for sale, right? But don't shame people because they have to make a decision that benefits them.
I mean, I don't think she was trying to do that.
No, I don't think she, I'm speaking, that may be a hit dog holler, right? But I'm speaking in general what I'm seeing on social media.
Yeah, no, I see it too. And I got checked for that years ago because I used to tell people, quit selling your homes in Lamert and Crenshaw and Watts and moving to Moreno Valley because we're diluting the Black vote. I was like, stay, circle your wagons. But a lot of people let me know, hey, some folks feel they don't have any choice.
Right.
And their circumstances are such that it's none of your business. So I had to back down from that. So I understand what you're saying. Remind us how to find you other than on this mic over here at KBLA.
At James Farr Live across all socials.
At James Farr Live, and he's doing a splendid job covering updates and up-to-the-minute news around the Altadena recovery. James, thank you for coming in.
Thank you, as always, Dominique Agape.
Special thank you to Dominique DiPrima and journalist James Farr from KBLA in Los Angeles, and Tavis Smiley for helping provide the content. If you would like to contribute to this podcast, please contact us. Our information is in the show notes. Coming up on the next episode of Altadena After the Fire.
Mental health is some of the things that we've been thinking about really deeply within our community. I've given about maybe 5 to 7 tours of Altadena. I was up there the day of the fires. I was up there the second and third day of the fires. And so it is a mental toll that takes on us.
To support those affected by the Eden Fire, consider donating to the Brotherhood Crusade's Wildfire Relief Fund at urban1cares.com. Your contributions provide essential resources like food, medicine, and housing assistance to families in need. If you have updated information or a first-hand story to share, we'd love to hear from you. Contact details are in the show notes. Altadena After the Fire is an Urban One podcast. Executive producer and host, Kobe Tyner. Assistant producer, Jahi Whitehead. Director of podcasting, Dre Smith. Special thanks to the Urban One Cares team and our founder, Kathy Hughes. Thank you for tuning in. See you next time.